Rain tapped lightly against the tall windows of the old concert hall as Elena Voss sat at the piano, her fingers hovering above the keys. The audience waited, in breathless silence, unaware that the melody they were about to hear wasn't just a performance. It was retribution. 5 years ago, Elena was the rising star of the Vienna Conservatory, gifted, disciplined, and humble. She had everything until her mentor, Victor Hale, destroyed her. He'd stolen her composition, claiming it as his own, and used it to rise to international fame. When she confronted him, he laughed, dismissed her as an emotional apprentice, and used his influence to blacklist her from every music institution in Europe. That night, standing outside the conservatory in the snow, Elena swore that she'd make him pay not with violence, but with art. For years, she disappeared from the public eye. Rumors said she'd gone mad, others claimed she'd quit music entirely. But in truth, Elena was perfecting a single masterpiece, the Silent Symphony, a piece so intricate that no one could perform it without knowing its secret. The story of betrayal hidden within its notes. Her plan unfolded with quiet precision. First, she changed her name, becoming Elena Vale, a reclusive composer with no past. Then, she submitted her new symphony to the Vienna Grand Festival, the same event where Victor Hale was set to conduct the closing performance. She knew he'd notice the piece, the beauty, the structure, the subtle echo of the melody he once stole. And he did. Victor was intrigued, then obsessed. "Whoever this Elena Vale is," he had said in an interview, "her genius rivals the masters." He insisted on premiering the piece himself, never realizing who had written it. Elena received her invitation to the performance with a cold smile. "Perfect," she whispered. Now, seated behind the piano on that fateful night, Elena watched Victor walk onto the stage, unaware that his greatest triumph would soon become his downfall. He bowed confidently, his baton gleaming under the spotlight. The orchestra began to play. The first movement was hauntingly familiar, a slow, mournful tune reminiscent of the stolen composition that made him famous. The audience was mesmerized, but Victor's face began to pale. Each note carried a memory of lies, deceit, and stolen dreams. Then came the second movement. The tempo quickened, and strange, discordant notes slipped in, twisting the melody. Victor's hands trembled. He tried to steady himself, but the music was unraveling him. Elena played her part flawlessly, eyes locked on him. The third movement began a crescendo of fury and sorrow. And then came the moment she'd been waiting for. The hidden motif, buried deep in the score, formed a message when played in sequence, a musical cipher spelling out, "I remember." Victor's eyes widened as realization struck. He looked up, straight at Elena, and saw the apprentice he had betrayed. Panic washed over him. His baton slipped, his rhythm faltered. The orchestra stumbled to follow. The audience murmured in confusion, but Elena kept playing, her face calm, her movements sharp and deliberate. She struck the final chord with a power that reverberated through the hall, a sound like thunder, tearing the air apart. Victor collapsed to his knees. The audience thought it was part of the act until he dropped his baton and clutched his chest, gasping. The curtain fell. Moments later, chaos erupting on stage. The next morning, the newspapers called it a tragic end to a brilliant career. Victor Hale had suffered a heart attack during his final performance. But music critics across Europe hailed Elena Vale's Silent Symphony as a masterpiece of emotion and precision, a requiem for a fallen genius. No one knew that the true composer stood quietly at his funeral, a single white rose in her hand. She placed it on his coffin and whispered, "Now, the stage is mine again." Then she turned and walked away, her heels echoing like soft metronomes against the marble floor. Years later, students at the conservatory would still speak of the Silent Symphony, a piece so beautiful it made listeners weep, and so mysterious that no one could quite explain its power. Only Elena knew the truth. It wasn't just music, it was justice set to a melody.